The views and opinions expressed on Explorers Secrets of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Secrets of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Boom, and there we go.
Well, welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 56. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Les and Cabbage. How are you doing this evening, Les?
Very good. You know, I almost didn't make it through that one without laughing. Normally, you're the one who laughs. That was a pretty good introduction. Well, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's been kind of difficult today trying to get the studio set up, because this being the first episode I get to shoot in this studio.
It's looking good.
Yeah, I was at about 3 o'clock throwing books on a bookshelf.
Well, they look perfectly aligned.
Yeah, trying to figure out what goes in what section and how to split the sections up, and I realized I'm just going to have to add that bottom shelf in.
I know where you're coming from, dude. I have 1-2 bookshelves, pretty decent size, filled to the brim. And I told you about the Barnes & Noble sale because they're relocating. I have so many new books, like literally they're stacking. I have a stack next to me, a stack on the coffee table back there. I don't know where to go with them. I need another bookshelf in here, and I don't have room for one.
Well, I have plenty of room. It's just my I need to get a light hooked up in here and all this other great stuff.
You'll get there, baby steps. But it's looking good so far, man. I like the look behind you. It's nice and open and airy.
Yeah, it's definitely going to give me more room to work on stuff, and I'm going to have more room for research material and equipment, so be able to do some fun stuff out of here. So tell the audience where they can reach us.
Oh yeah, I guess I got to do that part, don't I? You could, if you're tuning in into the show tonight, you could watch us live on Facebook and YouTube as we kind of simulcast on both of those media outlets. You could comment underneath the show on either Facebook or YouTube, and we should hopefully be able to see it live as we're going through the show. You could find us on Twitter at Explorers Group. You could find us at our website, explorersgroup.com. So any one of those outlets while you're watching or whatever, you could reach out and communicate. Give us some show topic ideas, or if there's anybody that would like to be interviewed with any kind of a special topic of interest or a story that you'd like to share, we could bring you on the show and you could have your conversation live.
Yeah. One of the things too with that, would like to see if anybody has any good paranormal stories, more true to life to them for our Halloween episode. I'd like to maybe do some story time, get some people, if there's anybody that has a good story, get them on the show for that episode. So tonight's topic will be we'll be covering the basic information about the subject of the Roswell incident. And then over the next 2 episodes, we're going to kind of get into a deeper look at the events, be it a possible cover-up by the U.S. government and the possibility that it was a Russian psyop. So as we go on, we're going to kind of delve into those pieces. So let's move on to our topic, the location. And, being Roswell, which is funny because, of course, they say Roswell, but it is about 75 miles outside of Roswell, and in either direction. And they just, it's kind of like the old, the incident at Waco.
Mhm.
The Branch Davidian complex is not in Waco. It's probably about 30 some minutes outside of Waco, but you always heard Waco.
Probably the
So,
closest large town as an identifier.
yeah, pretty much. Well, it's also where the military base was at the time.
Hmm.
So it kind of lends to that name. It's the more important of the areas that we're going to discuss.
Gotcha.
And of course, this happened back in 1947. So, and
It's a while ago.
yeah, we're going way back there. So, starting on the 1st and 2nd of July, there was a strange radar sighting that was observed by the 509th Bomb Squadron radar at the base at Roswell Army Air Corps. And then on July 4th, again, they cite this, but then the object disappears off the scopes.
Interesting. Then when cowboy William Ware Mac Brazel, W.W. Mac Brazel, and foreman of the Foster Ranch near Corona, 75 miles or 120 kilometers, as Chad likes to always point out, north of Roswell, rode out to check on his sheep the morning after a particularly violent thunderstorm in early July 1947. He and his young neighbor D. Proctor found a wide swath of strange debris spread across the prairie. So Brazel collected several pieces of wood and metal and foil that he later showed his parents and his young friend. They all had urged him to take it to the authorities and report everything.
Yeah. So then on Sunday, July 6th, Brazel drives into Roswell, brings his story and some of the debris to Sheriff George Wilcox at the courthouse. The sheriff wasn't particularly interested, but he did telephone the Roswell Army Airfield in case that this is, indications of a commercial plane crash or a small plane crash. So he wanted to at least alert them to the fact of the area to look. And the recovered debris was gathered then by the U.S. military from Roswell under the direction of Base Intelligence Officer Major Jesse Marcel. In his office next to the jail at the back of the Chavez County is where they actually stored some of the stuff for a little while. If you can pop up the Rhodes photo for me.
Yep. I will see if I can find it. Okay, here we go.
Okay. So the Rhodes UFO photo, sometimes called the shoe heel UFO photo, are two photos that were taken reportedly on July 7th of 1947 by an amateur astronomer and inventor named Wilbert Albert Rhodes. The photographs purport to show a disc-like object flying above Phoenix, Arizona. Rhodes' account and photographs were published by the Arizona Republic on July 9th.
Let me try and pull that back down here. When you have too many photos, here we go. When you have too many photos in the queue, you have to slide back and forth, and then the stuff that's in the live stream gets pushed off, and you have to kind of find its own It's so clunky, this interface. Which, again, Phoenix, Arizona, like we were talking about the Arizona lights a few shows ago and stuff, which is kind of interesting. Now we're going back to 1947 now with all these different photographs of objects that are being seen. Like Arizona is just a hotbed of activity.
Well, I think the American Southwest is
in general
is a very active sighting area. Like we did discuss in like the Phoenix Lights episode.
And Sedona, Arizona.
You have more open space, less people, less light pollution. You have more people because the weather is nice outside, doing stuff, and they just happen to look up and see something. That's one of the things like Rhodes. He had basically said he had walked out his door and was standing on his porch and looked up and saw this. Just happened to have a camera close by, ran and grabbed the camera, came out, snapped the photos. And, he wasn't looking for something. He just happened to notice it in the sky above him.
Well, I'm impressed that the thing still hung around long enough for him to run back in, grab a photo, and come back out and still be able to see it. Because normally most of the sightings are, well, most, but not all. Because obviously, like the Phoenix lights, those lights were kind of hovering and moving kind of slowly through the sky and stuff like that. So you had more time to video or photograph the subject. But a lot of cases, it's like, there's something there, and in a flash, it's gone. So the fact that he was able to do that and get the pictures is impressive. But back on track here, on July 8th, 1947, Public Information Officer Lieutenant Walter Hout issued a press release under orders from the base commander, Colonel William Blancard, which said basically that we have in our possession a flying saucer. And the next day, another press release was issued, this time from General Roger Ramey, stating it was a weather balloon. That was the start of the best known and well documented UFO cover-up.
Yeah, if you want to pop up one of the two newspaper articles there, would kind of just show everybody the...
Well, the first one I'll show is the newspaper article itself, and then the next picture I'll show is the close-up of the guy holding the debris. So as it says there, disc craze continues. Army disc counts New Mexico find as weather gear. So again, the one report issued was saying it was an unknown flying object or an unidentified flying object, and then quickly retracted and reissued as a weather balloon. And here's another, I could show a cleaner picture of the soldier with the debris. And that, I mean, looking at that picture, that literally looks like this is that's the same one. Let me hide another one.
That's Jesse Marcel holding the cover-up material that he was given to show the press. One of the things, if you look at him, you could just see in his eyes that whole this is what I'm being told to tell you. I know better, but this is what I'm told to do, and this is my career, so I'm going to do it.
And I wonder if that debris that he's holding is the actual debris, because I mean that just looks like aluminum foil or like a foil balloon.
Well, no, that is his later story is that that was stuff he was given from a weather balloon to present. This wasn't the evidence they collected in the field.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
which makes sense. So I'm going to hide this one now.
Yeah. So like Les had said, they basically issued a press statement saying they had recovered a disc. Then they quickly retract the statement and said the crashed object was just a conventional weather balloon. So the Roswell incident wasn't widely discussed until the 1970s. Basically when retired Lieutenant Colonel at this point, Jesse Marcel, in an interview with ufologist Stanton Friedman, said he believed the debris he had retrieved was extraterrestrial. Ufologists then began prompting a variety of increased and elaborate conspiracy theories about it, claiming that one or more alien spacecrafts had crash landed and that extraterrestrial occupants had been recovered by the military, which then engaged in a cover-up. So it's the aliens we had in Independence Day when they go to Area 51 and Brett Spiker's the crazy white-haired doctor. They had this whole time,
which would be cool.
Well, I mean, there's always a possibility.
So we're going to get into the second crash site story, according to Kevin Randall.
Yeah. So just a quick sidebar, explain who Kevin Randall is. He was an American, or is, I'm sorry, he's not passed away. Is an American, wow, I'm mean. He is an American ufologist. He's a science fiction writer, a historical fiction writer, and a military veteran. And within the UFO community, he's kind of regarded as one of the preeminent experts on the crash of a UFO near Roswell in July of 47. He's kind of almost like the want to say like a Bindernagel or
Or Lauren Coleman of
Lauren
cryptozoology,
Coleman.
but he's the
Yeah, he's the guy. Like he's the one who you're going to get. I forget exactly. He's almost the Hans Holzer of UFO stuff because I know he's written at
a
least
lot of stuff about it.
5 or 6 books now on UFO or on just on Roswell and different pieces of it. So have to
Interesting.
pick up a few of his books and get into reading them.
I'll have to look at one of my shelves because I have so many goddamn books. I don't even know who I have anymore. But that would be nice to have. I mean, considering he is from, has the military background and he was involved in all that, I'd love to read some more of those reports, which, again, I don't want to say too much because we have 2 other parts to this show that we have to get into. But on July 5th, an archaeological team out looking, plus a man and woman, she's married, he isn't, they are not supposed to be together. So they witness something flying overhead and it slams into the ground. So this is part of the second crash site story. They go to look at it, but are too drunk. Next morning, they sneak back to the area, but the archaeological team is on site and sends people to get the sheriff. So the sheriff alerts the 509th branch, or whatever you want to call it, the
Bomb squadron.
Bomb squadron, yeah. They dispatch a crew of trucks. The military sets up a courtesan, so just to stay outside of Roswell, which is 75 miles southeast of the site.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting to stake their claim there at this point, as these innocent drunken bystanders witness something and go back to see what was happening. And now all of a sudden the military, as usual, is doing what they do best and taking things over.
Yeah. So now the next part we're going to discuss is something I found very interesting. And this is actually the daughter of one of the firefighters who was dispatched to this site.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, she was only about 12 years old. So she's well within the remembering things, understanding things, especially when you think about 1947. We're just coming out of World War II. Kids grew up a little bit quicker back then.
Mm-hmm.
So her name was Frankie Rowe. And just jump spaces here. Hold on one second. I want to get into her recorded testimony. So her father did admit to a crashed object, but not at the Corona site. Okay. He had stated that it was somewhere else. Now, her reason for saying it's not that area and the story that was presented to her at the time wasn't correct. This is a story where she was being interviewed and the person brings up this other site. And, her thing is the Roswell Fire Department would not have responded to the Corona area. But her father did tell her the location that they had gone to. Now, if you could pull up the map that shows Roswell, Corona, and Clovis.
I'll bring them up. If it's not the right one, I'll bring up the other one because it's hard to see because they're tiny little thumbnails.
Bring up the other map.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that the same one? Oh, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one. So when you look at this, you can see their Corona up there to the top, and then you see about the same distance going east of there would be Clovis. So now think about, what is Clovis famous for?
I don't know.
What's that?
I said I don't know. You tell me.
The Clovis site. The first human or first modernist man site in North America, or one of them.
Oh yeah, the Clovis man. Yeah. Which is the Clovis Point.
Yeah,
which
and
is
that's the Clovis they're talking about.
Ah, see, I was thinking that you were trying to talk about a paranormal thing there. I didn't realize it was just actual human history. So
No,
that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's not
That was
that
a big
far.
settlement there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's only 75 miles outside of Roswell. So her recounting of the story, her father had been working, basically the fire department worked these really long shifts where they would work 24 hours, be off for 8 hours, or they'd work 36 straight hours and be off for 12.
Mm-hmm.
So she said basically later the next day or later that same day when he came home, she was in the kitchen with her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And her father was super excited. And it's one of the things she said, he was never excited. Like he was just a very even-keeled man, didn't get super excited about anything.
Right.
So he basically comes in super excited and says, I have something I want to tell everybody, get everybody in here. And her mom told him that they were cooking dinner and that they would hurry up to get everybody together. So her father basically does the, how long is it going to be? I have something I need to tell everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So they hurry all the kids in, and her father starts to tell them that they had gone on a call they thought was going to be a plane crash north of Roswell. They got called out to Blackwater Draw. And when they got there, what they saw was not an airplane. It was a flying craft of some sort from somewhere else. And
can you imagine that coming up on that though? Man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So Blackwater Draw is basically just in the Clovis area. It's another name that they use in that area for Clovis. And it's, I guess, actually a draw, an old draw that's in that area. So, she basically goes on, and I'm basically just kind of going through some of her testimony here and giving it out. She said, well, we didn't ask any questions. Mother asked all the questions, and we sat and listened. And her mother basically looks at him and says, what do you mean somewhere else? And the father goes into, it's not an airplane. It's not from this world. He said the crash is like a flying saucer that they'd been talking about. Now, basically, Kenneth Arnold's sightings had just happened a couple months, maybe a month before. So, of course, her mom, not to be mean, but typical mom, doesn't believe him.
Of course.
And he basically goes into, no, I mean it. We went out there earlier today. When we got there, we could see two bodies that were laying on the ground outside of this craft. And there was one, what he called a little person. He was still up walking around.
God, that had to be awesome. That had to be awesome.
Awesome and a little bit scary until he gets.
Oh yeah, terrifying. But I mean, just could you imagine? Could you imagine?
Yeah. So.
Hey Rick, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Oh,
sorry, I had to throw that in.
Yeah, that was the first comment I saw pop up there. I was a little nervous. So, mom gets into asking, what do they look like? Do they look like us? And the father said they were very small, the size of a 10-year-old child, but with a head like that of a little insect that they call the child of the earth. It's a little bug. They have them. They're pretty prevalent out in the Southwest. Basically, the head's too large for the body. There's no hair and large eyes. And he said they looked quite a bit like us, just smaller.
Yeah.
And he
God,
said,
give me chills.
Yeah. He said the other two were dead. And the other, he could tell the living one was very sad.
Yeah.
And he basically emphasized, there is no need for us to be afraid. They're not here to hurt us. And he said we could help them. He was very upset about the fact. Like, her dad was just super upset, like, that they couldn't do anything to help these creatures.
Right.
Whatever you want to consider them. And he felt bad that he couldn't help. and he really felt bad because he could feel. He said, there was no verbal communication, but he could feel the sadness coming from the one that was still alive, like how it had lost its two companions.
Right.
And at that point, he was well into the story, and this is going on at the supper table. And basically, then he says they'd only been on the site for a couple minutes before the military made them leave. And basically, there was no grass fire, which would have been expected with a normal plane crash.
Right.
In that area. So,
well, yeah, because I guess you figure the planes that we're familiar with would be loaded with jet fuel. You're going to have all the debris laying around. The fuel would be ignited, like you said, a huge inferno. Most of the UFO or UAPs, whatever you want to call them, have some sort of a projectile or propulsionary device or engine or whatever engine system that looks almost or seems more almost like what do you want to call it? Non-combustible engine. You know what I mean? Like a
anti-gravity
propulsion, almost like maybe like running off of magnets. You know how like a lot of the trains, like in I think Japan has a train that runs on magnets and it can go ridiculous speeds, could stop at the drop of a hat, like just almost in that sense, but yet could fly. You know what I mean? But it has that anti-gravity whatever about it, I think that's pretty freaking crazy, man. Like that would just blow my mind if I just came upon that wreckage. Obviously, you're seeing it's some sort of a craft that's not of this earth. You have two deceased beings and another one sitting there mourning the loss and probably doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine. Like, how do you react to that? It's insane. But get back on track here. I'm kind of diverted there, but a few days later, while at the fire station with her father, a state police officer asked her father to gather the firefighters. He had something to show them. He said, "I don't think you guys got to see anything like this the other day." He removed a piece of material and dropped it on the table in a wad, and when it hit the table, it spread open like it was water. He was asked how did you come by this, and he stated that he had been helping with the cleaning up of the debris and managed to sneak it out of the area. He said that he didn't know how long he would get to keep it, and everyone who had got caught was forced to give up what they had. Kevin Randall has interviewed 4 dozen people who had contact with this strange foil-like material. They tried to burn it, it wouldn't burn. They tried cutting it, they couldn't cut it. Felt like nothing in your hand would, and it would fold up into a small ball or whatever, and then you drop it, and it would spread right back out again, which is interesting. So it's virtually indestructible, other than, I guess, crashing it into the earth would kind of do some damage, at a high, I would imagine. Then it felt, and then these people who had scraped aluminum foil off of stuff for the war effort. So their experience with that, they had experience with that kind of material, but not to this extent. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty interesting that they would find this material or sneak out this material, and it had these odd properties to it. I wonder whatever happened to that.
Well, allegedly, there is a piece of the Roswell material that is in a private research group's possession.
Mm.
And of course, is it real? Is it some fake piece of something, that they just have out there and they're just saying it's, it came from Roswell, but they believe it came from Roswell.
Mm.
So now to kind of finish up with Frankie Rowe's story, and I know I'm going to be jumping off the notes here a little bit, but 2 weeks later, she was at home with her mom. Her dad was at work, and a military vehicle pulls up, and a gentleman gets out of the vehicle, comes into the house, speaks to the mother, and says, "Well, I need to talk to your daughter." And so that she comes in, she goes to sit down on the couch. He goes, "No, you're not going to sit. We're going to go in the kitchen. You're going to stand. We're going to talk, or the dining room." So he takes her in there, and he basically asks her about being at the firehouse. He says, "Were you the one at the firehouse?" She says, "Yes." He's like, "What did you see?" She starts telling him all this stuff about them trying to cut it, them trying to burn it, them folding it up, dropping it, and spreading out. All the stuff that they had witnessed with it.
Right.
The man looks at her and says, "No, you didn't." And of course, she's a 12-year-old girl. She's like very, she was always known as being very honest and truthful. She's like, "Yes, I did." And he's going through the, "No, you didn't. Did not see any of this. You've never touched any of this. You don't know anything about this. You weren't even at the firehouse."
Right.
And she
Right.
goes, "But I was, and I did." And she goes, she's combating. She's a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
An adult. So she's combating everything he says, and the guy eventually looks at his mom and is like, "Is she dumb?"
Yeah. She's not catching on, obviously.
Yeah. And the mom's like, No. You have to explain to her what you want."
Mm-hmm.
So the guy goes into the fact of, "Okay, what I want you to do from now on is you weren't at the firehouse. Okay? Yeah. You didn't see anything. Okay? Yeah. You're never to talk about this again as long as you live. Because as long as you live, we will be able to get you." As he's saying this, he has a club in his hand, a billy club, and he's beating it on his other palm.
Wow.
And intimidating her. So he basically goes through it all with her again. She's like, "Nope, never was there." Basically says to the mom, "This is never spoke of again. This never happened." So the guy is going on about it, basically closing up everything he's doing. And he basically, one of the last things he says to her is, "It's not hard to make you disappear." And there was a German prisoner of war camp and a Japanese prisoner of war camp that weren't too far away. He's like, "I can make your whole family disappear. I can send you to the Japanese camp and your mom and dad to the German camp. Nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever talk about you. Nobody will ever discuss you existed." Then he turns and looks at her and says, "Or we're in the middle of the desert. People disappear all the time." Now she's a 12-year-old that this military officer is basically threatening.
That's horrible.
Yeah, so you got to imagine she went pretty much her entire life until she was much older. Mm-hmm. When I say much older, she's probably almost in her 70s at the point she actually talked about it.
Jesus.
Yeah. And basically when she was in her 70s, she just got to the point where people had basically figured out who her dad was.
Mm-hmm.
And knew he had been part of the fire department who had went to the Blackwater draw.
Right.
So basically eventually started asking around to try to get, she had moved out of the area and everything. And, basically got to the point where I believe it was Kevin Randall finally contacted her, and she just happened to be driving to see her daughter and had to come back through the Roswell area. Like from point A to point B, just happened to go by there through Roswell. So she agreed to sit down and talk to him. And that's when the story earlier started with me giving her testimony on it. Was he describes the whole Mac Brazel debris field, army, stuff like that. being Corona. And that's when she basically points out to him, no, her dad wouldn't have went to Corona. Roswell wouldn't have responded to a fire, even, unless it was a major fire, they wouldn't have responded to Corona. Going out more towards Clovis, they would have responded. So that's how she basically figures into all this. And I mean, she said, I've seen some interviews with her, and she had gotten older, and when she finally talked about it, this woman cries. Like when she talks about it, like when she tells the story about the guy coming to threaten her and her family, I mean, she is like sobbing, wiping tears from her eyes, completely. If she's lying about that incident, even just that piece of it, she needs an Academy Award.
Jeez.
Like it's Oscar worthy. Like if DiCaprio got one for Revenant, if she's lying and this is acting, she deserves one for that testimony in a documentary. And basically her kids even got mad at her. Like when she finally discussed it and the information kind of got released out to the public, they were like, Mom, why didn't you say anything? And she's like, I never said anything to anybody after that day. She's like, we didn't discuss it at home. We never, when it came out in, the 70s that it started to become popular again, she's like, I just never brought it up. I never talked about it. She'd see stuff pop up about it and she would just move on with her life. So she definitely, there was something going on there. There was definitely something, whether it was a UFO or as we get into later episodes and we discuss some of the other possibilities on this, she experienced something. Right. So, like we had said earlier, basically Roswell is forgotten until about 1978. So you go from 47 to 78, nothing really. It was a headline, made world news, and the retraction came out, and within a day or two, it was out of the media. Back then the media scope wasn't what it is today. It's not going to, be on TMZ and then Fox News and CNN and then, shared 15,000 times on some social media platform. It made headlines. They covered it. There was a retraction. It died. Right. Except for the people who lived in the area. It was a dead topic. So, of course, in 78, the sensationalist National Enquirer reprinted the original uncorrected article from July 8th of 1947. And in February of 78, the Lieutenant Colonel Marcel's interview with Stanton Friedman. And of course, that's when Marcel said, I believe the Roswell debris was extraterrestrial. Right. So getting into who Jesse Antonio Marcel Sr. was. So he was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force who had helped the administration of Operation Crossroads. Excuse me one second. Yep. So Operation Crossroads is the famous 1946 atomic bomb testing on the Bikini Atoll. And he later goes on, continues up through the military. He was a major at the time, makes lieutenant colonel. Now, he was, during World War II, he did work in intelligence, aerial surveillance and stuff, whatever they considered it back then, but aerial surveillance. He knew what airplanes looked like. He was trained on all this stuff. He was trained to find, looking at photos to find debris fields, to find signs of something crashing. So he definitely was somebody who wouldn't mistake a weather balloon for something extraterrestrial. Right. you know, he would have had knowledge of pretty much high level knowledge of even secret, you know, government equipment. Now, you know, he wouldn't have maybe been super read in on everything, but he would have a knowledge of our balloon programs and stuff like that.
Right. So, you want me to pick up my part there? I didn't know if you were done that part of the Marcel.
No,
Sr.
you can cover some of that. That would be fine.
Okay. So then on December 19th of 1979, Marcel was interviewed by Bob Pratt of the National Enquirer. And on February 28th, 1980, the tabloid brought large-scale attention to the Marcel story. So on September 20th, 1980, the TV series In Search Of aired an interview where Marcel described his participation in the 1947 press conference. They wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do was keep my mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed and told the newspapers, I mean the newsmen, what it was, and to forget about it. It is nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, we both knew differently, according to Marcel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it like I said in that photo, you can just see he's somebody who's been told not to.
Yeah.
Go.
Just like that little girl. Yeah, they're gonna use the scare tactics to try and shut people up. And I'm sure there's anybody within that vicinity that had any kind of interaction or inclination of that it wasn't what they're trying to say it was. They were probably all forced into secrecy. Yeah.
So now you get into Marcel's son, Jesse Marcel Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent 35 years starting in 47 kind of into this incident, but not necessarily able to divulge everything he knew.
Right.
So he was 10 years old at the time. And of course, just like the state trooper, his dad had actually brought home and shown them some of the alien debris recovered from the crash site.
Interesting.
And one of the things that he had brought up was that there was a small beam with like a purple hue to it, and what appeared to be like hieroglyphics.
Interesting.
Now, one of the things that people point to is around that time, there was tape that was sold at basically sold all over the country that had hieroglyphics on it. It was regular crafting tape.
Yeah.
And it basically did have hieroglyphics on it. That's one of the things people kind of always point to, and they go, when going with the company line of it was a crashed weather balloon.
Yeah.
Basically, the government says, oh, those hieroglyphics that he talks about, well, that was a common crafting tape that was sold back then. We just happened to use it on some of our equipment because it was what we had available.
Well, in between missions, a lot of the soldiers back then like to do crafting in their spare time when they're at the base.
Yeah.
Because I could totally see a crafting tape being a mistaken or a common thing just lying around that they would just happen to grab.
Well, and also you'd think if it was so widely used in America at that time, do you think a 10-year-old boy wouldn't have known the difference? Like he would have probably either in school or at home,
the local
seen
5
it in
and
the
10
store.
Yeah. Obviously that doesn't hold any weight there, but just another cheap cop out to try and cover up the facts, But according to a 1994 Air Force report produced in response to a congressional inquiry into the Roswell incident, The material recovered by Marcel was likely debris from Project Mogul, a then sensitive classified project whose purpose was to determine the state of Soviet nuclear weapons research using high altitude balloons. So during June and July in 47, Mogul balloons had been test launched at Alamogordo Army Airfield, now Holloman AFB Air Force Base, and White Sands Missile Range. Air Force Declassification Officer Lieutenant James McAndrew concluded when the civilians and personnel from Roswell Army Air Force Base stumbled upon the highly classified project and collected the debris, no one at Roswell had a need to know about information concerning Mogul. This fact, along with the initial misidentification and subsequent rumors that the capture of a flying disc occurred, ultimately left people with unanswered questions that have endured to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of course they point to another program and say that's, it wasn't need to know at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Project Mogul did go on for a little while until they figured out that it was a lot easier to spy on the Russian nuke programs in a different manner, basically using some other technologies. So it wasn't a long running program. It probably only ran for about a year or two till they figured out there's seismic, using seismographs to, find the detonations and stuff like that, and air quality stuff.
Which,
so
not to cut you off there, but it just kind of made me think. It's kind of similar. They're trying to say, "Oh, we use these weather balloons to spy," but isn't that what China just did not that long ago?
Oh,
Sent
yeah,
these weather balloons over to spy on everything.
Yeah, you basically say, "Oh, we're researching weather and weather patterns," and then you launch these balloons. China's just didn't fly high enough. Mogul and some of these projects were very high altitude projects.
Yeah.
But again,
I just thought it was funny, you know what I mean? Because it was like, oh yeah, the weather balloons, like China's using that old technology.
Yeah, again, I don't care how advanced the weather balloon is. You're not gonna mistake a balloon for a flying saucer or shoe heel UFO sticking out of the ground.
Oh no, not sticking out of the ground. Now, if it is high altitude and the balloon is big enough, I think they were saying like the Chinese balloons were like as wide as a bus or as wide as several buses or something like that. Very, very large. But you see that up in the sky, from an extreme distance, you're not going to know what the hell that thing is at first. So I could see the misidentification at high altitude, but on the ground, absolutely not. Yeah, you're not going to.
Yeah, and when you're looking at it, these are people who are saying we saw something sticking out of the ground. Out at the Foster Ranch, it's more of a debris field where something skidded across the ground.
Yeah. Well, kind of like the cover image for our show. I'll bring it up. Like they're talking more like now that is a crashed craft in the background, even though you can't really see too much. But that's kind of along the lines of what they're describing is something embedded into the earth, sticking up, a circular disc, not pieces of aluminum foil just strewn about,
Yeah. You can say it was a balloon, but it's very hard to swallow when you have eyewitnesses saying, "No, we saw 3 people. We saw
3 beings." Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of looking at Marcel as a person, he, later in his career is with Strategic Air Command. He's promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel, and he's with the 509th at Walker Army Air Force Base until August of 48 when he's transferred to Strategic Air Command at Andrews Air Force Base. Now, when he's at Strategic Air Command, he transfers to a base out in Nebraska, and then, transfers around a little bit. And after, in about July of 50, he requested a hardship discharge and returned home to Louisiana, and was released from active duty and then transferred to the Air Force Reserves and was finally discharged in 1958. So, he had been through World War II, had still been serving in the intermediate time between World War II and the Korean War. I mean, he's almost up to the Vietnam War. He's in the military.
Right.
And he's kind of rewarded in a lot of ways. Like, he takes the fall for misidentifying the weather balloon.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those, like, take the fall. We'll get you back for it. We'll give you something in the long run. Not saying the man didn't deserve to be promoted, but eventually gets promoted.
Yeah,
gets transferred, to some like Strategic Air Command. Very cushy gig. He's in Nebraska for a while. Basically gets his hardship discharge granted instantly for his go home and take care of his elderly mother.
Mm-hmm.
And then does basically 8 years in the reserves. I'm sure he had some cushy details while he was there. So he definitely, I think it's one of those things like, hey, you know what you know, we're going to give you some benefit for eating the crow on this one.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen right away, but down the road, you're going to get reward.
Yeah.
So
that's probably why they let him go for that hardship and stuff like that. It's like, all right, look, you kind of went through the crap here. So go do your thing, whatever. We're going to take care of you. We're going to put you and your mom up or whatever. And, then what did he come back? Oh no, he received his final discharge in 1958. So 11 years after the initial incident, he's probably set up pretty well to retire and not have to worry about doing anything after that.
Yeah, he had I think about a 17-year military career.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, he had been, he actually went to his military schooling post was in Carlisle, PA.
Oh, no shit. That's pretty cool.
That was where one of the aerial reconnaissance schools was back for World War II. Carlisle.
That's awesome.
Barracks. Yeah, he was there.
Close to home.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were very close to it last Saturday.
That's true.
That's
true.
20 minutes down the road. But
as we were sweating ourselves to near death walking around.
Yeah.
Fun though. I'd do it again.
Yeah, a great time. Even the air conditioning in stores wasn't cutting it though.
Oh yeah, you could tell it was fighting. It was fighting to keep up with the heat.
So now on the next episode, we're gonna break into a deeper look at parts of the events, the possible cover-up. The fact that this could also be completely a Russian psyop.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one of the great things I love to do, because I'm so good at it, I'm going to create a crazy theory.
A Charlesworth theory of the Roswell incident?
Of the Roswell incident.
Oh, I can't wait.
And then we're going to start sharing it to the general population like we know it's true. So I expect everybody to be part of this, to just go, yeah, it makes complete sense. Chad said it. Go back and watch.
Well, hey, you had the Charlesworth theory for the Jotlov Pass, which was hard to refute that one. For anybody who doesn't know about that, go to our website, explorersgroup.com, and go through our live shows tab and find the Jotlov Pass show and learn about the Charlesworth theory of the Jotlov Pass. And there's also the Charlesworth theory of discovering what the Jersey Devil most likely was. So you have to go back and listen to that one too, and find out what the Charlesworth theory is on that. But yes, so there is definitely a lot more that we could dive into for the Roswell incident. I am very much looking forward to that. So we were supposed to go live last week. We had technical issues, big shocker. So we went live today. So for anybody, we have one person watching right now. We plan on going live again next week, which would be, it's so hard to see. 25th. So Tuesday the 25th, we will go live for part 2 of the Roswell incident. So hopefully everybody could tune in. I'm going to set that show up tonight, and we can start sharing it around, so that way hopefully more people are aware, because I think what happened tonight, we set the show up for last week. I think everybody thought we were going to go live, and then I had to update it. So I don't think anybody was getting notifications for that, which kind of stinks, but hey, what can you do? So yes, we are going to go live next week, the 25th. The show will be set up tonight and out for everybody to see. Otherwise, thank you for those who did tune in. Rick, if you're still there listening, buddy, we thank you for tuning in as always. And for those who might tune in later, join us next week, the 25th, for part 2 of the Roswell incident. Chad, we have 2 minutes left, so we are actually on time for closing out the show tonight. So thank you as always for putting this show together, and probably the next 2 parts for this. After that, after the Jesus, I'm drawing up like the Roswell incident, 3rd part. If it's okay with you, I'd like to maybe look into the Bridgewater Triangle up in Massachusetts.
Actually, I'd love to do that.
Okay. So
very interesting, Pat.
You guys heard it officially right now. So we're going to have Roswell Incident Part 2 next week, the 25th. 2 weeks after that, we'll have Roswell Incident Part 3. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to jump into the Bridgewater Triangle of Massachusetts. So again, Chad, thank you, brother. It was great seeing you over the weekend.
Yeah, it was nice seeing you too. Nice seeing everybody.
Yeah, very good to have the show tonight. I'm glad we were able to do it. This is a great topic, one that I've always loved, the Roswell incident. So looking forward to next week. I can't wait to hang out with you again, brother. Good show.
Yeah, man, great. It was great hanging out with you guys. It was nice seeing you guys all over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. We were in Gettysburg. We got to slump around in the 99-degree heat indexed weather.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great. It was fun. Got that ice cream.
The kids loved it. They got to see their Uncle Chad and Annalicia, so they were very, very happy about that.
Yeah, it was great. It was nice seeing them. They're all getting so big so quick.
Yeah, too big, too fast. But all right, brother, it was a pleasure. Everybody who tuned in and anybody who may tune in, thank you guys for watching and supporting the show. We will see you guys next week on the 25th. Good night.
Night, night.